Wait, before you scroll again, ask yourself something honestly. How long have you been waiting for a sign? Not just today, not just recently, but for a while. You've been telling yourself, when I get a clear sign, I'll know what to do. When it's obvious, I'll move. When I'm sure, I'll take the step. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. It sounds wise. It sounds like you're being careful. But if you slow down for a moment, there's something deeper going on. Because you're not actually waiting for a sign. You're waiting for certainty. You're waiting for something so clear that it removes all risk, all doubt, all responsibility. But that kind of sign almost never comes the way you expect. Because if you're honest, you've already had moments. Moments where something felt clear. Moments where you knew what you should do. Moments where something inside you said, "This matters." But you didn't move. Not because you didn't see it, but because it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. It required something from you. And so you told yourself, "That's not it. I'll wait for another sign." And now, you're still waiting. But here's the truth you haven't fully accepted yet. You're not waiting for a sign. You're waiting for the sign to feel easy. And that's why you're stuck. Stay here, because what you're about to realize might change how you see every sign you've ever received.
The truth is, you don't actually lack signs. You've had them. More than once. More than you probably remember. They just didn't look the way you expected them to. You were looking for something loud, something undeniable, something that would remove all doubt the moment you saw it. But most of the time, that's not how clarity comes. It comes quietly, in moments that don't seem dramatic, in thoughts that appear and stay just long enough to be noticed, in feelings that don't go away even when you try to move past them. And you've felt those moments. You've had that sense of knowing, even if you couldn't explain it fully. But instead of trusting it, you questioned it. You told yourself it wasn't clear enough, not strong enough, not certain enough to act on. So you waited. You told yourself you needed more confirmation, more clarity, more assurance. But what you were really waiting for was the removal of risk. Because if the sign was obvious enough, then you wouldn't have to take responsibility for the decision. You could just follow it without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. But real direction doesn't work like that. It doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It reveals enough for you to take a step. And that's where you've been hesitating. Not because you don't see anything, but because what you see requires you to move before you feel completely ready. And that's the part you've been avoiding. Not the sign itself, but what it asks of you. Because every real sign comes with something attached to it. A step, a decision, a shift. Something that moves you out of where you are, and into something uncertain. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. It asks you to move without having everything figured out. It asks you to trust what you feel before you can fully explain it. It asks you to act without guarantees. So instead of responding to the sign, you analyze it, you question it, you go over it again and again, trying to make it clearer, safer, more certain. But clarity doesn't increase the way you expect it to. It doesn't become perfect. It becomes repeated. It shows up again and again and again in slightly different ways, but pointing to the same thing. And you've noticed that pattern, how certain thoughts don't leave, how certain situations keep returning, how certain feelings don't fade like others do. That's not confusion, that's consistency. And consistency is how real direction works. It doesn't force you. It stays with you. It gives you enough space to recognize it, but not enough pressure to make you move. That part is up to you. And right now, you're standing in that space where you've seen enough, but you're still deciding whether you're willing to act on it. And this is where most people stay longer than they should, in between knowing and doing. It's a quiet place, not obvious from the outside. Everything still looks normal. You're still going through your days, still handling what you need to handle, still moving forward in ways that seem fine. But inside, there's a pause, a hesitation that doesn't fully go away. Because you're aware of something now, and awareness changes how everything feels. You can't go back to not knowing. You can try to ignore it. You can distract yourself. You can focus on other things, but it doesn't fully leave. It stays in the background. Quiet, but present. And the longer you stay in that space, the heavier it becomes. Not because something is wrong, but because something is unresolved. You're holding a decision without making it. You're carrying clarity without responding to it. And that creates tension, a kind of inner pressure that builds over time. You might feel it as restlessness, or as overthinking, or as a constant sense that something isn't fully settled. And that's because it isn't. You're not stuck because you don't know what to do. You're stuck because you haven't acted on what you already know. And the longer that continues, the more that feeling grows. Not to punish you, but to remind you that you're not meant to stay here. You're meant to move. And the reason it keeps coming back is not to pressure you. It's to keep the truth in front of you. Because what matters doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade just because you delay it. It stays, not loudly, not forcefully, but consistently. You may have noticed that. How the same idea returns, even after you've tried to move past it. How the same decision comes back into your thoughts, even when you've convinced yourself to wait. How the same feeling shows up at the exact moments you're finally still. That's not coincidence. That's clarity refusing to leave you. Not because you're being pushed, but because you're being given the chance to respond again and again and again, until you either act or become so used to ignoring it that you stop noticing it altogether. And that's the real risk. Not that you'll make the wrong decision, but that you'll stop responding to what's right in front of you. Because the more you ignore something that matters, the easier it becomes to ignore it the next time. And slowly, that awareness becomes quieter. Not because it's gone, but because you've trained yourself not to listen. And that's not where you want to stay. Because you weren't meant to keep circling the same decision. You were meant to move through it. And right now, you're being given another chance to do exactly that. So now the question becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. What are you going to do with what you already know? Not what you might learn later. Not what could become clearer in the future. What you already recognize right now. Because you've seen it. You've felt it. You've had enough moments to know this isn't random. And at this point, waiting is no longer neutral. It's a choice. A quiet one, but a real one. Every time you say, "I'll wait a little longer," you're choosing to stay where you are. You're choosing to carry that same tension. You're choosing to delay what could already be moving. And maybe you've told yourself that waiting is wise, that you just need more time, that you're being careful. But there's a difference between being careful and avoiding a step you already know you need to take. And deep down you can feel that difference, because careful feels steady. Avoidance feels heavy. Careful feels calm. Avoidance feels like something is being held back. And that's where you are right now. Not confused, not lost. Aware. Aware enough to know that this moment is not about finding another sign. It's about responding to the one you already received. And response doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be fully figured out. It just has to be honest. One step, one decision, one moment where you stop delaying what you already recognize. That's all it is. But that step changes something. Not everything around you, but everything within you. Because the moment you respond, you break the pattern of waiting, the pattern of overthinking, the pattern of asking for more signs when you've already been given enough. And once that pattern breaks, something else takes its place. Movement, not fast, not overwhelming, but real. You're no longer standing in the same place mentally. You're no longer circling the same thoughts. You're no longer asking the same question over and over again. Because you answered it, not with words, but with action. And action has a way of creating clarity that thinking never can. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the step that's in front of you. Because clarity doesn't come before movement. It comes through it. And the moment you move, even slightly, you'll start to feel it. That shift, that release, that sense that something has finally begun. Not because everything is certain, but because you're no longer waiting for certainty to begin. And once you take that step, something inside you settles. Not because everything is suddenly clear, but because you're no longer resisting what you already knew. That resistance is what was creating the tension, that constant back and forth in your mind, that feeling of being stuck between two directions. And now, that pressure starts to ease, because you've moved, even if it's small, even if no one else sees it, even if everything around you looks the same. Something inside you is different. You're no longer waiting, you're participating, and that changes how everything feels. Uncertainty is still there, but it doesn't feel as heavy. Questions still exist, but they don't stop you. Because now you understand something you didn't before. You don't need complete clarity to move forward. You just need enough to take the next step. And you already had that. You always did. You were just waiting for it to feel easier. But now that you've acted, you see it differently. You see that clarity wasn't missing. It was waiting for your response. And now that you've given it, you're no longer in the same place you were before. You've shifted. And that shift is what begins to open everything else. So now, before you move on from this moment, pause one more time, not to think, not to question, just to recognize. Because something important just happened. You saw it, you understood it. And now, you know what this has been about all along. Not waiting, not searching, not hoping for something clearer, but responded to what you already had. You were never missing a sign. You were just waiting for it to feel certain, and now you understand. Certainty was never the requirement. Willingness was. The willingness to move. The willingness to trust what you already recognized. The willingness to take a step even when you didn't have everything figured out. And that's what changes everything. Not a new sign. Not a louder message, just a different response. So as you move forward from here, don't go back to waiting. Don't go back to asking for something you already received. Stay in this, stay in the awareness, stay in the movement. Because the moment you stop waiting is the moment things finally begin to open, and you're already there.